This is Limelight America. Here's your host, Michael Drew Shaw.
Thank you, Lynette, and welcome to Limelight America, where we present one-on-one personal conversations with interesting people from all walks of life. These up-close encounters with people of the fascinating and inspiring kind include business, entertainment, sports, and artistic entrepreneurs, scholars, role models, and philanthropists who impact the quality of life for us all. We're talking with Thaddeus Warrow, the author of Radicals and Visionaries. I have to believe you have a couple of favorites.
Growing up seeing I Love Lucy, I always considered Lucy to be a brilliant comedian and Desi just her straight man. Desi was not only an excellent businessman, but he was quite an innovator.
All right, you build companies to sell them. I started out with Chongqing Chinese Foods in 1944, and I sold to R.J. Reynolds Tobacco for $63 million in '67. I have 7 banks because I had to put the money somewhere.
In 1923, a small group of the world's wealthiest and loneliest men gathered at the Edgewater Beach Hotel in Chicago. At the time, they collectively had more money than the U.S. Treasury. Listen to what eventually happened to them. Charles Schwab, head of America's largest steel company, died broke. So did wheat speculator Arthur Cutten. Richard Whitney, president of the New York Stock Exchange, died in prison. Jess Livermore, Leon Fraser, and Ivar Kruger, all Wall Street barons, committed suicide. The moral? Don't confuse wealth with happiness. Always make things more enduring than money your first priority.
Give them quality. That's the best kind of advertising in the world. Milton Hershey.
During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, a time when ruthless business people created empires of steel, oil, and railroads on the backs of a hapless rural population forced into grim factory towns, Milton S. Hershey followed a different path to success. Unlike Carnegie, Rockefeller, Vanderbilt, and the other robber barons, as they were called, who offered their workers callous treatment and back-breaking labor for menial wages, Hershey offered his employees dignity and prosperity, inspiring bounteous love and loyalty in his workers and making himself wildly rich in the process. Even so, Hershey's path to sweet success was fraught with obstacles and setbacks that would have crushed lesser men. But through perseverance, ingenuity, and his amazing ability to bounce back from failure, he built one of the great American fortunes from the ground up and brought joy to millions with a wonder that would immortalize his name, Hershey's Chocolate. Hershey began his candy-making career at age 15 when he was an apprentice to Lancaster, Pennsylvania confectioner Joseph H. Royer. Hershey blossomed under Royer's tutelage, acquiring many of the skills and tools he would later use to build his own empire. In 1876, with $100 he'd borrowed from his aunt, Hershey opened his first candy shop in Philadelphia. For 6 years, he worked day and night to keep the business alive, working 15 to 16 hours a day. Hershey would make caramels and taffies at night, then sell them from a pushcart to crowds at the Great Centennial Exposition, which was being held to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. But in February 1882, after a winter dogged by illness and mounting debt, Hershey sold the business and headed to Denver to join his father in the great Colorado Silver Rush. Surprisingly, the riches Hershey found in Colorado came not from the ground, but from a cow. While working for a confectioner in Denver, Hershey learned that adding fresh milk to caramel greatly improved its quality and extended the candy's shelf life, a discovery that would be crucial in later years. Hershey left Denver for Chicago, where he started another candy shop. But failure continued to haunt him, and the venture quickly fell through. After a similar experience in New Orleans, Hershey headed to New York City and opened yet another store. Despite his best efforts, the company continually lost money. When a group of kids stampeded his delivery wagon and made off with his entire stock, Hershey was bankrupt. Hershey returned to Lancaster to find that his relatives had given up on him, refusing even to take him in, let alone lend him money to start another business. But Hershey would soon find salvation in the form of an old friend and employee. Henry Lebkischer, who had briefly worked for Hershey in his Philadelphia store, not only offered Hershey a place to live, but also lent him the money he needed to bring his candy-making equipment from New York. The pair then scraped together enough capital to start the business that would firmly establish Milton Hershey as a candy maker, the Lancaster Caramel Company. Drawing from his experience in Denver, Hershey began experimenting with using fresh milk in the candy-making process, and then created a unique confection he called Hershey's Crystal A Caramels. Impressed with the quality and shipping stability of Hershey's new, chewy milk-based caramels, an English importer placed a large candy order, enabling Hershey to secure a $250,000 loan with which he quickly began expanding his business. By 1893, in addition to the original Lancaster factory, the now incorporated Lancaster Caramel Company had plants in Mount Joy, Pennsylvania, Chicago, and Geneva, Illinois, which together employed more than 1,300 workers. Hershey's persistence had finally paid off, and this would prove to be just the beginning. During a visit to the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, Hershey witnessed a demonstration of chocolate rolling machinery from Germany that sparked a new determination in him. Hershey turned to a friend and said, "Caramels are a fad, but chocolate is permanent. I'm going to make chocolate." The next year, using the very same machinery he'd seen at the exposition, Milton started the Hershey Chocolate Company and began producing more than 114 different types of chocolate candies, including the product that would make his name famous the world over, the milk chocolate Hershey bar. Previously manufactured only in Switzerland and Germany, milk chocolate was new to the U.S., and the Hershey bar became an instant phenomenon. It was so successful that Hershey sold Lancaster Caramel Company for $1 million and turned his attention solely to chocolate. For several years, Hershey had been perfecting a plan for mass-producing milk chocolate. Now, with the wealth generated from the sale of the Caramel Company, he could put that plan into action. Inspired by the utopian city of the future created for the Columbian Exposition, Hershey set out to build not just chocolate factories, but the ideal town where the workforce could live, play, work, and prosper. Because of its rich supply of clean water, proximity to some of the finest dairy farms in the country, and plenty of land for expansion, Hershey chose his birthplace, Dairy Church, Pennsylvania, as the site for his dream city. In 1903, Hershey broke ground for his new factory and set into motion the events that would turn his dream into reality. The factory was modern in every way, with high-tech machinery that eliminated the cost and tedium of making and wrapping chocolate by hand and made possible the mass production of high-quality milk chocolate at affordable prices. The community Hershey built for his employees, officially renamed Hershey, Pennsylvania in 1905, was just as impressive and modern. It featured affordable housing with sewage and electricity, paved streets with names like Chocolate Avenue and Cocoa Avenue, schools, department stores, a trolley system, churches, a library, hospital, a zoo, an open-air theater, and even an amusement park. Both the community and the company prospered, and by 1915, the chocolate plant alone covered 35 acres. Company sales rocketed from $600,000 in 1901 to $20 million by 1921. When the stock market crashed in 1929, Hershey refused to let the dark shadow of the Depression fall over his idyllic community. While other companies fired employees and cut back their operations, Hershey embarked on an ambitious building plan devised solely to keep his workers employed. They constructed a new high school, a sports arena, a community building, and a lavish 170-room hotel. Legend has it that during construction of the hotel, Hershey was watching a steam shovel in operation when a foreman proudly commented that it could do the job of 40 workers. Hershey told the foreman to get rid of the shovel and hire 40 people. Both the company and the town survived the Depression and continued to flourish, thanks to Hershey's singular vision and amazing inventiveness. Hershey would put that inventiveness to use for his country during World War II when he oversaw the development of the high-energy field ration D-bars carried by GIs serving in the war zones. The 4-ounce non-melting chocolate bars packed 600 calories and could support soldiers if no other food was available. Hershey would later say that the 4 Army-Navy E for Excellence awards bestowed on the field ration D-bars were among the proudest achievements of his life. Hershey remained at the helm of his chocolate empire until 1944, when he finally retired as chairman of the board at the age of 87. He spent the 88th and final year of his life still experimenting with new confections, including carrot and potato ice cream. Shortly after Hershey's death in 1945, the chairman of the board of the National City Bank of New York would proclaim, Milton Hershey was a man who measured success not in dollars, but in terms of a good product to pass on to the public, and still more in the usefulness of those dollars for the benefit of his fellow man.
You're listening to Limelight America.
Can you name the 5 wealthiest people in the world? Or the last 3 Heisman Trophy winners? Or 2 Nobel Prize winners? Even though they're the best in their fields, few of us remember the headliners of yesterday. Now, name a teacher who had a positive influence when you were in school, or a friend who helped you through a difficult time. An important part of an entrepreneur's spirit is a willingness to help others, even in small ways that, at the time, don't seem like much. One of my favorite quotes comes from Anita Roddick, the founder of a global cosmetics business called The Body Shop Limited. If you think you're too small to have an impact, try going to bed with a mosquito.
Our vision is to be the world's most consumer-centric company, where customers can come to find anything they want to buy online. Jeff Bezos.
In 1994, Jeff Bezos was already what many would consider extremely successful. The youngest ever senior vice president at Wall Street investment banker D.E. Shaw and Company, the 30-year-old Bezos was already making an estimated 6-figure salary and was destined to rise even further in the company's ranks. But Jeff had other plans. Fueled by a secret passion for the infant business of electronic retailing, Jeff dreamed of creating his own company in the vast World Wide Web. It was a risky move, but it quickly paid off. Just 4 years after Bezos created Amazon.com, the virtual bookstore became the template for how e-commerce business should be run, with sales of more than $610 million and more than 13 million customers worldwide. Bezos first got the idea to start an internet enterprise in 1994. While surfing the internet in search of new ventures for D.E. Shaw and Company to invest in, he came across the statistic that World Wide Web usage was growing by 2,300% a month. Bezos immediately recognized the expansive possibilities of selling online and began exploring the entrepreneurial possibilities of developing an internet business. He drew up a list of 20 potential products he thought might sell well via the internet, including software, CDs, and books. After reviewing the list, books were the obvious choice, primarily because of the sheer number of titles in existence. Bezos realized that while even the largest superstores could stock only a few 100,000 books, a mere fraction of what is available, a virtual bookstore could offer millions of titles. The die was cast. Bezos passed up a fat bonus, packed his wife Mackenzie and their dog Camilla, named after an obscure Star Trek character, and headed for Seattle. For Bezos, Seattle was the ideal city for his new business. Not only was it home to a tremendous pool of high-tech talent, it was also in close proximity to Ingram Book Group's Oregon warehouse. While Mackenzie drove, Jeff spent the trip pecking out a business plan on a laptop computer and calling prospective investors on a cell phone. With $1 million raised from family and friends, Bezos rented a house in Seattle and set up his business in the garage. For nearly a year, Bezos and a crew of 5 employees worked out of the garage, learning how to source books and setting up a computer system that would make Amazon.com easy to navigate. In addition to creating a user-friendly interface that would streamline the needle-in-the-haystack process bookstore shopping often entails, Bezos, a true marketing visionary, wanted to establish a virtual community where visitors could hang out. To achieve this goal, he and his team created a number of innovative programs. In July of '95, Amazon.com opened its virtual doors, calling itself Earth's biggest bookstore, with more than 1 million titles to choose from. Fueled by word of mouth, or more accurately, word of email, Amazon.com rocketed off the line like a nitro-burning dragster. And captured by the enormous selection of books, the superior customer service, and the user-friendly design of the site, Internet users plugged Amazon.com on Internet news groups and mailing lists. The orders poured in, and by September 1996, Amazon.com had grown into a company of 100 employees and had racked up more than $15.7 million in sales. 3 years later, those figures would rocket to more than 3,000 employees, including some in Britain and Germany, and more than $610 million in sales. By 2005, Amazon.com boasted 8,000 employees and had annual sales of $2 billion and was growing at a rate of 20% a year. Amazon.com's success did not go unnoticed by bookstore giant Barnes & Noble, who quickly put up its own website. To combat Amazon.com's claim that it was the Earth's biggest bookstore, Barnes & Noble embarked on an aggressive marketing campaign proclaiming that they offered twice as many books as Amazon.com. But it was a strategy doomed to failure. The forward-thinking Bezos had already expanded Amazon.com's product line to include CDs and replaced Earth's biggest bookstore with the tagline, books, music, and more, leaving Barnes & Noble, as one writer put it, wrapping its fingers around the neck of a phantom. Amazon.com has continued to stay ahead of its closest competitor, boasting 85% of the web book market to Barnes & Noble's 11%. But that may soon change. In fact, in the near future, they may no longer even be considered competitors. After his successful venture into the music market, Bezos set his sights on expanding Amazon.com into other markets. Shortly before the 1998 Christmas season, Bezos added a temporary gift section to Amazon.com, where customers could buy toys and games. He also began experimenting with Shop the Web, a program giving Amazon.com a commission for directing its customers to other non-competing online retailers. In late January of 1999, Amazon.com went after the $150 billion U.S. pharmacy market, buying a share of Drugstore.com, a company that sells everything from breath mints to Viagra online. What drives Bezos? In a March 1999 PC Week article, he explained, "We're trying to innovate the e-commerce arena. That's our heritage. We're building something that can't be pigeonholed." Bezos confidently told his shareholders in the spring of 2005, "We have so much greenfield ahead of us and so much opportunity that I think we will be able to very profitably invest in our future. There's years and years of work ahead of us to continue to build out these categories." Oh, and this is interesting. When Jeff Bezos first started his virtual venture, he wanted to call the company Cadabra, as in abracadabra. He phoned his Seattle lawyer to try out the name, but the attorney misheard Bezos and replied, "Cadaver? Why would you want to call your company that?" Bezos quickly reconsidered and adopted the name Amazon.com after the world's second largest river. Here on Limelight America, we're going to meet 36 groundbreaking entrepreneurs who fueled the 21st century with their explosion of achievement. It shaped our modern world as we know it today. Radicals and Visionaries reveals the complete stories of both the legendary masters of enterprise and the unsung entrepreneurial heroes. We're going to discover little-known facts, and we'll learn the success secrets of people like A.P. Giannini, the green grocer with no financial experience, who took on the suits and founded the world's largest bank. Ron Popeil, the part-time carnival huckster whose late-night TV commercials for kitchen gadgets kicked off the infomercial phenomenon. From the turn-of-the-century capitalists who ushered in the industrial age to the mass-market moguls who molded pop culture, Radicals and Visionaries is a lively, revealing, and often astonishing chronicle of the lives and accomplishments of some of the most influential entrepreneurs ever known.
You're listening to Limelight America.
When the chips are down, an entrepreneur will find a way. 25-year-old Herman began peddling potato chips out of his trunk in 1931. Soon, he had 6 regions and was growing fast when his supplier ran into money trouble. Herman bought the supplier and continued to expand his territory. In 1945, he became a corn chip distributor for Dallas-based Frito Company. In 1961, Herman Lay merged with the firm to become Frito-Lay. Frito-Lay merged with Pepsi in 1965, and that is how a Tennessee potato chip salesman became chairman of the board of PepsiCo. Something to think about the next time your chips are down.
What I'm most proud of is the fact that we really create a way to work with employees, let them share in the profits, and still keep control of it. William Hewlett.
Over the years, the name Hewlett-Packard has become synonymous with high-tech innovation. From its early days in 1939 right up to the present, HP's growth has been fueled by one technological breakthrough after another. But what really sets HP apart isn't technology, but the visionary management style created by HP founders William Hewlett and David Packard. Their policy of showing sensitivity to their employees' needs and giving their workers the chance to be creative in solving technical and business problems has made HP one of the most successful and admired companies in the history of American industry. Bill and Dave, as HP employees affectionately refer to them, first met in the early 1930s while studying radio engineering at Stanford University in Palo Alto, California. Both avid outdoorsmen with a rabid fascination for electronics, the two became fast friends, spending many weekends camping and fishing in the wilds of the Colorado mountains. After getting their degrees, Hewlett went on to graduate study at both Stanford and MIT, while Packard took a job in vacuum tube engineering at General Electric. In 1939, Hewlett returned to Palo Alto, and he and Packard quickly renewed their friendship. Encouraged by Stanford professor and mentor Fred Terman to start a business of their own, the two young engineers raised $538 in startup capital, set up shop in the one-car garage behind Packard's Palo Alto house, and flipped a coin to decide the company's name. Hewlett won the toss, and Hewlett-Packard was born. The duo's first venture was an automatic foul line indicator for bowling alleys. Although it was ingenious, the product really had no market. Undaunted by this initial failure, the two began to work on a design Hewlett had outlined in his master's thesis. They created an audio oscillator, which they dubbed the HP 200A. Packard would later reveal that the name was selected to give customers the impression that they weren't dealing with an upstart company offering its first product. The HP 200A was designed to test sound equipment and also tuned harmonicas. The second feature didn't do much for sales, but Walt Disney, at work on Fantasia, bought 8 of the devices. Inspired by the sale to Disney, Hewlett and Packard decided to try selling their new product via mail order, so they sent out letters, mostly to university laboratories. A few orders trickled in, so they sent out more letters. At the same time, they began work on a new product. We figured that if people needed the HP 200A as a source of sound, they would also need something to measure it. So we brought out a device to measure what happened, Hewlett explained in an interview in Electronic News. During World War II, in which Hewlett served as a chief signal officer, Hewlett-Packard expanded rapidly to meet the needs of various defense projects. What began as a trickle of orders turned into a stream and then a flood, which boosted company sales to $1 million by 1943. During this time, the company began developing what would become known throughout Silicon Valley as the HP Way. This paternalistic set of practices and policies offered HP workers generous benefits, including medical insurance, to cover catastrophic health problems, something that was virtually unheard of in business at the time. After World War II, orders dipped, but the emerging technology of electronics quickly filled the void. Inundated with orders, HP was propelled into going public in 1957. As HP's product line expanded, so did its number of employees. More responsibility had to be delegated. The partners further refined the HP way by establishing a novel management philosophy in which managers at all levels were given a wide berth to develop plans, make decisions, and follow them up. As Hewlett explained in Electronic News, Dave and I set up this philosophy of management by objective. We felt that fundamentally, people wanted to do a good job, but they needed guidelines, so we set up corporate objectives. In addition to increased autonomy for managers, the partners also increased the number of benefits they offered their employees. HP became the first U.S. company to offer workers flexible hours. It also introduced profit sharing and established such management innovations as open offices and employee coffee talks. This maverick management philosophy broke down the barriers between management and employees. It encouraged creativity and innovation and fostered the respect and trust of the workers. As the number of HP's employees grew from the hundreds into the thousands, to maintain a small business atmosphere, Hewlett and Packard divided the company according to product types, with each division having its own marketing, production, and research groups. Support functions such as sales and advertising were handled by outside contractors. As a result, HP continued on the fast track throughout the 1960s, with the company growing from a single entity in Palo Alto to more than a dozen manufacturing divisions organized into 4 product groups. The objectives Hewlett and Packard established in 1957 remained relatively unchanged until the company entered the computer market. As long as the company was in the instrument business, what one division did really didn't affect another. But the move into computers required a more integrated plan. If you're going to have a new processor, you've got to have terminals and disks that operate with it, Hewlett explained in Industry Week. So you can't have the same degree of autonomy that the old instrument-based division did. Despite this, realizing that autonomy was one of the main reasons for the company's success, Hewlett and Packard struggled to give their workers as much autonomy as possible. For example, instead of telling the disk division exactly what type of disks to create, Hewlett and Packard would simply give the division a general description of what was needed and let them optimize the design. While HP continued to grow and prosper throughout the 1970s, Hewlett and Packard, both now approaching their 60s, began a careful withdrawal from active management. In 1977, Packard stepped down as chairman of the board. The following year, Hewlett handed over the title of president and CEO to HP executive John Young, but stayed with the company as chairman of HP's executive committee. He then became vice chairman of the board in 1983, where he remained until his retirement in 1987. In 1990, Hewlett and Packard briefly returned to active management duties to spearhead an overhaul that is widely credited with revitalizing the company and preventing the losses and layoffs that plagued IBM and Digital. Hewlett left shortly after he helped write the listing company, but remained director emeritus until passing away in 2001. Packard remained on as chairman until 3 years before his death in 1996. Today, William Hewlett and David Packard are hailed as two of the nation's most respected businessmen and philanthropists. From a tiny mail order business started in Palo Alto, they built a company whose technical excellence, innovative management practices, and consistent commercial success will remain an inspiration and model for generations of high-tech entrepreneurs to come. Oh, and in 1988, the one-car garage behind 367 Addison Avenue in Palo Alto, where William Hewlett and David Packard built their first oscilloscope, was officially designated as a California State Historical Landmark. A plaque placed on the lawn proclaims the garage as the birthplace of Silicon Valley.
Limelight America is produced by the LA Radio Network.